Namaste, my name is Pranavanand Oja. I belong to Faculty of Law and Governance, and in this video I am going to talk about jurisprudence, and the name of the session is Introduction to Jurisprudence. So, what is jurisprudence? Jurisprudence comes from the word jurisprudentia, means ability to know the law, the knowledge of law, and by definition we mean stating with an acceptable degree of precision what a thing is. So for example, what is a planet? So a planet is XYZ. So when we define something, we put a limitation on the very word, but the problem with the definition of jurisprudence is that there cannot be any specific degree of definition that we can attach to jurisprudence. That is where various people has defined jurisprudence in various ways. For example, Annan has said that jurisprudence is the scientific synthesis of the law's essential principle. So there are various. In the opinion of Allen, there might be various principles which have synthesized together and formed a structure basically. So that structure would be jurisprudence. And then comes Jolovis. Jolovis defines jurisprudence as a general theoretical discussion about law and its principle, as opposed to the study of actual rule of law. With this, we come to this that if you look at the Allen's definition, it's scientific principle. So, can jurisprudence be classified as a science? Now it is doubtful whether jurisprudence can be defined as science. Scientific method is rarely used in jurisprudential investigation. Few universal verifiable principles have emerged from jurisprudence. So Lavinger reminded us that the unanswerable question in the life belong to the realm of philosophy, and jurisprudence is the philosophy of law. So in a way, the unanswerable question through the law is determined to the philosophy of law. Now with every subject comes the vocabulary of that subject, and the vocabulary of jurisprudence is eclectic, drawn from political science, economics, social theory, and legal philosophy and procedures. So the nature of facts described by words is to be taken into account by the jurist. The emotive nature of the words must not be overlooked. And in this regard, Hart plays a very important role, and Hart stresses the need to study legal words in their context. This is what we call semanticism. And then it suggests that the carefully restricted nature of legal language tends to vitiate communication. Now, within this format, there are various schools of law, as Edgar Bodenheimer arranges jurisprudential thoughts under following headings. So, there is this Greek and Roman theory, there is legal philosophy in the Middle Ages, natural law in the classical era, German transcendental idealism, historical and evolution theories, utilitarianism, analytical positivism, sociological jurisprudence, and legal realism, and natural law revived. But Salmond subdivides jurisprudence like analytical, historical, and ethical, and Stone finds it convenient to organize jurisprudence into three branches: analytical, sociological, and theory of justice. Now, there are certain difficulties in such classification. Now, as I saw, Bodenheimer arranged. So, arrangement is not classification. Although classification is arrangement, the difference being that while arrangement may be empirical, classification must be in accordance with certain principle, as per Dr. D. Andrews. Now the problem of overlap is very considerable. Like rigid divisions tend to perpetuate the initial problems arising from the compartmentalization of thought, and it is not easy to place some jurist in appropriate pigeonholes. Like can we directly say that H.L.A. Hart is absolutely or 100% positivist? He is not. And classification may be convenient method of overviewing a subject, but it is little more than that in jurisprudence. So let's start with the topic of jurisprudence. So within jurisprudence there are various traditions, like Indian tradition, Western tradition. In Western there is Greek tradition, Roman tradition, and so many more. So we will basically deal with Western tradition and Western tradition of jurisprudence. So we are going to start founders of Western tradition, that is Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero. So by Western jurisprudence, we have in mind the overall attitude of jurists in the West to questions of justice and law and the patterns of legal theory which have prevailed in Eastern Europe and United States. So the legal tradition of the West as to be interpreted by its jurist has been in the words of J.C. Smith. As J.C. Smith tries to explain the Western tradition by saying that to regard the Greco-Roman synthesis as a superior form of law which concentrates on the individual man with his attendant rights and obligations. Some jurists find the rationale of Western jurisprudence in a general desire to move towards the securing of a social order not based on irritational dogma. Dogma is basically a collective and ensuring stability without involving more restraints than are necessary for the preservation of the community. So, for this session, we will try to discuss Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, and in the next session, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. So, it is important to understand that the Greek political and legal thought was concerned essentially with the concrete problems of social and individual life. Plato's aim was to furnish that analytical concept with which man might build the perfect state. Aristotle was concerned too with the ideal state in which man might realize the good life, achieve the summum bonum, something called summum bonum, and dwell in justice. And law is perceived as a means to this noble end. It conferred a general benefit. In Plato's word, we deny that laws are true laws unless they are enacted in the interest of the common weal of the whole stone. Justice was all. It constituted a general virtue, a harmony. As I have discussed in theory of justice, that as per these people, what was justice is lack of injustice. Where there is harmony, there is justice. And harmony with what? Harmony with nature, in which a man would flourish and achieve his fulfillment. It is from this tradition of thought that there was a spun in the thread which was used to fabricate a significant portion of the vast tapestry of Western legal theory. So let's discuss Plato. So what is Plato's concept of this state? So Plato expounded his theory of justice and the state in the book Republic and the Laws. And the starting point for his discussion on the nature of this state is the dialogue in the Republic between Socrates and a group of friends who are asked to define justice. So basically it's a dialogical process. Their attempts collapse under the weight of Socrates' superior dialectical skills, and the concept of a state emerges from the subsequent inquiry by Plato into its fundamental nature. So in order to understand the nature of justice, it is better to examine its writ large in the structure and functions of the state. Contemplation of the just state will be more productive than concentration on the just individual. So now with this we shall start looking into the state and human nature. So according to Plato, the state reflects human nature. No man is self-sufficing, and a division of labor is needed, allowing each member of society to perform the task for which he is by nature best fitted. The result is the emergence of a variety of groups within society. So craftsmen, that is farmers and artisans, will produce food, shelter, clothing, etc. Inevitable wars will produce an army of warriors who as guardians will protect the community. The most highly trained guardians will become an elite of rulers. So groups in a state. So what are these groups in a state? Each of these groups epitomize one of the three parts of human soul. According to Plato, as we have discussed in the theories of justice, there are three parts: appetite, temperance, and rational. So the craftsman symbolizes the appetitive aspect of the soul, and their specific virtue is temperance. The guardians represent the spirited part of the soul. Their specific virtue is courage, and the rulers exemplify the rational part of the soul. Their specific virtue is wisdom. So members of the community will be taught to believe that nature demands a harmonious and stratified society, and so that this end might be achieved has mixed brass uh, and iron in the composition of craftsmen, silver in the composition of the guardians, and gold in the composition of rulers. So the ideal state, in essence, a balanced structure in which all groups work in harmony. So its unity is an amalgam of all diversities. So with this idea of state, let's come to the concept of justice according to Plato. So the state is a means to an end, namely the attainment of justice. So the general virtue of justice arises when each class within the state is fulfilling its own special functions and thereby attaining its own virtues. So like we have discussed in the old sessions that Plato and Aristotle comes from this teleological approach, wherein teleological approach means purpose. There is certain purpose. So what is justice? According to Plato, if there is certain section of society and that certain section of society is devised to perform certain work, certain role, then fulfillment of that work, that role, would result into ultimate justice, and that is the virtue of the state. So what is this social harmony? So social harmony is where every class within the state performs according to its distinct function. Then social harmony will result. When each individual is set free from all other occupations, right, then the possibility of true justice will emerge. So harmony involving the virtues of temperance, courage and wisdom must be attained by the individuals who comprise of the state. Knowing and accepting one's limitations and one's place, acknowledging the need to obey orders, here is the essence of what is necessary for the maintenance of social unity and justice. So balanced uniformity is then the sine qua non of that degree of special perfection from which the true justice will flow. So every state has certain role. So what is every state? To know every state, we must know the types of state. So not all states are able to achieve the level of harmony appropriated to the creation and maintenance of justice. States have a tendency to degeneration. Plato classifies 5 types of state. So the first state, that is the ideal state, is the aristocracy, controlled by philosopher rulers, in which the justice reigns. The second is timocracy. So timocracy epistomizes irrational ambition and the love of honor. Third is plutocracy. A plutocracy is that kind of state where greed and pursuit of wealth predominate. Now the fourth is democracy. So democracy is characterized by a very low level of justice. It is an inadequate system and produces antagonisms. Now the fifth. Fifth is despotism. Now each type of state reflects human mental constitutions, and despotism reflects the enlargement of unjust soul, enslaved by a master passion and justice totally absent. So let's say Hitler's rule. Hitler's rule can be termed as despotism. So with this we comes to the conclusion of Plato's concept of justice. So Plato's concept of justice consists of a state wherein various classes are there, and each class has certain purpose, certain telos, and each section has to achieve that purpose, and it is achieving that purpose which will come out as a virtue, and that virtue is justice. Now in the next session we will try to understand Aristotle's concept of law and Aristotle's concept of justice. With this, thank you.